Welcome to this video discussing the subject of the Proface Edge Box HMI running Blue Open Studio, how its memory is organized, and how we can use different commands in our project to show us remaining memory space to redirect historical files to USB sticks and things like that. So just a real short summary. We're going to go over what the STM Edge Box HMI IoT memory structure looks like, and then we're going to just show a few commands and how we can use those in a project to take advantage of them. Okay. So basically what we have inside the Edge Box HMI's memory, and this is the way the memory is structured. We've got a gigabyte of flash memory that's used for basically for everything, for the system, for the project, and data. There is also 512 kilobytes of non-volatile RAM that is not being used by Blue Open Studio. It's a carryover from other platforms that use this same hardware, notably Blue and GP Pro EX. That non-volatile RAM is used by those systems. Okay, so within our 1 gigabyte of flash, we basically have two 512 megabyte allocations. And one of them is basically for the operating system, which is Linux, bootloader, etc. Basically, just half the memory is taken up basically by the operating system for all intents and purposes. And then the other 512 megabytes is divided up into 256 megabyte partitions. And then, as you can see in the chart here, one of them is for system runtime files and project, for the system runtime files and the project files. And then the other 256 megabytes is allocated basically for the historical data that we want to store directly into this memory. Okay, so the way that we will look at this memory in practice in the actual STM Edge Box HMI, first thing I'm going to do here is I am going to switch to my browser. Give me 1 second. Where I have gone into the web interface, the web user interface for the Edge Box HMI, and you can see what I've done is I've initialized the system. So the only thing that's actually in the system right now is basically the firmware. Okay, I don't have a runtime, I don't have a project or anything, and I do. And you remember, let me log back in. Okay. Do you remember that to enable download, one thing that you do have to do is you have to enable the project download here. I'm going to go ahead and submit that. Okay. So now the STM Box HMI, I'm going to go ahead and reboot it. Okay. And we'll be back in a minute. So while we are waiting for the Edge Box HMI to reboot after enabling download, let's take a look at what I've done here in Blue Open Studio in the project to start with. So basically what I did is I just created I just created a new project. And the only thing that I've actually done in the project right now is I've actually done nothing but enable mobile access. So I simply open this mobile access tab, save it, then I do a file, I do save all as HTML. And now I should be ready to load a bare bones minimum project into the HMI. I'm going to go ahead and connect. I actually do have the newer firmware in here, so this is a secure connection. So this is a little bit different from what you would see in a box with older firmware. Okay, so I'm connected to the device. You can see the project is stopped. I'm going to go ahead and install the runtime files. See you in a while. Okay, so now that I've transferred the runtime files into the unit, I'm going to go ahead and reconnect. And now I'm going to go ahead and send the project down. And you can see that only took a second. So I'm going to go ahead and put the HMI into run. You can see that it was started. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the remote management tool, go ahead and close. Okay, so now after downloading the project and rebooting the Edge Box HMI, now I'm just showing you that I've logged back in with the into the web interface, and you can see here that the system is running. It has a system version. Here's the runtime version that I sent in, and here is the project file that I created. Okay, so that's in this HMI now running. Okay, so now switching back to the PowerPoint, this is where I'm showing a couple of different commands that we can use, and most importantly, what is the path that we need to use to get at the places that we want to look at in the memory of the EdgeBox HMI. Remember, on Windows, this is a much easier thing to determine. So disk-free is going to be, whatever hard drive you want it, for example. But in the Linux space, this is a little bit different. So you can see here, info disk-free. So basically, we end up with two different areas that we really concern ourselves with. Basically, this is the data area. Okay, so this is the area where all the history and event files are stored. And then the info disk free for the system, this is where the basically the project in the runtime files are stored, like we talked about in the previous slide. Okay, and then the other thing that we need to take a look at is okay, when we're working with a project in the EdgeBox HMI and we're using alarms or events or data logging or all of them, or even just one of them, then how do we get the files actually onto, say, a USB stick? And what you'll see here is you've got these different areas where you have the alarm data. So the alarm and the events are stored in the alarm area. The data in the logging data files are stored in the historical area. And then this is the path to a USB stick. So what we end up with then in that case is when we use the file copy command, we're saying this is where where I'm looking into, this is the folder I'm looking at. I'm saying give me all files with this extension, and then move it to the USB stick. And then this 1000 here is just a timeout, just to have that in there for the command. Okay, and you could see for the other ones also. So let's take a look at what that looks like through, say, the the web page of the runtime project. Okay, so here we are at the basically the web page that the EdgeBox HMI is serving up right now to my browser, and it's basically there's nothing. You'll see there's nothing in it. This is a blank project at this point. Okay, but one thing that we can do is we can actually call up our watch window. So what we can actually do is we can come in here, and you'll see you can do this URL gives us gives us the watch window in the EdgeBox HMI. So what we want to do now is let's go ahead and let's look at our the amount of memory that we have through our info disk free command. So basically, I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to say I'm going to type in the command info disk free, do my parentheses, quote, and this is going to be for the system, quote, close parentheses. I think that looks okay. Yep. And you can see we've got about 171 megabytes. Okay, so now let's go ahead and let's see how much data space we have. So let's go info disk free. Okay, and you could see I've got a lot more space in the data, right? Because I haven't used anything. I don't have anything that's taking memory for that data at all right now. Okay, so you can see I have 223, almost 224 megabytes of data space to use right now. Okay, so just a quick look back at that slide in the PowerPoint where we illustrated these commands. So let's go ahead and look at how we can implement that in a real application. Okay, so what you're looking at now is a little application that I developed to basically log some data. So you'll see in this trend graph, we're basically logging data to the internal memory on the unit. I have some alarms set up in the unit. For example, I have the event logger also running in the project. So for example, if I go to enter data here, I hit OK, I need to confirm, and then I had to basically indicate which user, etc. So I've just basically have some stuff going on. Down here, you'll notice this is where we have the free space in the system. So you notice from before when we had it's not a very big project. So you could see, you know, one screen project, very few, not a lot of memory taking up. And then you could start to see that you can also notice that at this point we've got 2 megabytes eaten out of that original 223 because I'm obviously the logging data is taking up most of it. Okay. So let's go ahead and take a look at what this looks like. I have 3 buttons here. I have one is to back up the alarms to USB. I have one to back up the events to USB. And then I have one button to back up the logger to USB. And then I have a little, I don't remember which, we'll see which one goes high, but when it's complete and done, the indicator will go high telling me that it ran the command. Let's go ahead and just click this one. Give it a second. Okay, yeah, and you can see it went to 1, so I know it was successful. Go ahead and turn that back off. Turn that back off. Okay, there we go. Okay, backup events. Okay. Takes a second to go back off also. Back up the logger. Okay, so we know what happened. Okay, so now what we could do, I'm going to stop the HMI and take out the stick, and we'll take a look at what those files look like on our PC. Okay, so you can see here we're browsing the USB stick that we just backed up all those files to. You can see basically when we did it that ignore this histotext. That's the histotext exe that I'm going to use to decode the history file. But you can see this is when I backed everything up, basically at this with this timestamp. We'll talk about the history file here in a minute. And then you'll notice here's the alarm history file. You can see that's very small, not many alarms in here. And these will open with, basically a text editor. As you can see, this is what the alarm file looks like. This is what the event file looks like. Okay. And then what I did is I cheated a little bit. I ran the hist2text to do that. Just running the hist2text on the .hst file, and then it creates this text file. And then if we go ahead and if we look at what that text file looks like, you could see I've got data all the way back to yesterday, basically at 12:38 p.m. Time in the Edge box. Okay, and remember how those history files work. These are going to, depending on what your setting is, as far as how many days of history that you want to store, that's how many HST files will end up in memory. So if you tell it to say store 3 days worth, you'll have a .hst file for every day. If you tell it just give me 1 day, then you only have one HST file. Okay. So hopefully that was helpful. Like I said, just a little video to show you, like I said, we had to be explicit about these commands to do things because unlike Windows, we don't really have, full knowledge of what those paths are in the EdgeBox running a Linux operating system. So thank you for watching.